Hello, good evening and welcome. It's Friday, it's 8 o'clock, and that means it's time for Buster's Virtual Jazz Club. We're live on YouTube, and if you're out there, do say hello. Pop a little hello in the chat box. Be nice to know there's somebody listening. Hello, we can see already. Juju, hello, and Nick Beston, hello mate, how are you doing? So, before I get started, also just be aware that our clocks change on Sunday. So we're going to end British summertime on Sunday. So for our international viewers, I don't know whether yours are changing this Sunday or not, but just beware next week. This will be going out either an hour before or an hour after. I can't work it out, but just be aware next week if you want to watch it live that you get the right time. So, and of course I'll have to try and make sure I get the right time as well. Hello John, hello Steve. Thanks for joining us this evening. Lovely to see you guys out there. So, my guest this evening, ladies and gentlemen, is an incredible musician who's been at the top of the game for many years. He's worked with some of the world's finest musicians, including Frank Sinatra, yes, the Frank Sinatra, Ray Charles, Wayne Shorter, Stéphane Grappelli, Michel Legrand, Peggy Lee, Kurt Elling, Joe Lovano, Phil Woods, Jimmy Smith, Nancy Wilson, Abdullah Ibrahim, and I could go on. This year saw the release of his 21st album as a band leader, which was another critically acclaimed album in collaboration with rising young guitar star Rob Luft. And tonight, folks, we've got an exclusive. Today sees the release of another brand new album featuring him alongside another very fine tenor saxophone player who also happens to be his wife, and we'll be hearing some of that later. He is also a highly regarded educator at the London College of Contemporary Music, where he is the Jazz Pathway leader. And on top of all that, he runs his own specialist jazz recording studio, JVG, which combines old techniques as used by the great Rudy Van Gelder with newer modern innovations to get the perfect balance of traditional sound and digital quality which is perfect for jazz recordings. And we're going to hear some of his work from his own studio. He was nominated Best Tenor Saxophone Player in the 2018 British Jazz Awards, and I'm pleased to say he's here with us now, live on YouTube. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the very brilliant Dave O'Higgins. Hello, mate. How are you doing?
Hi, Buster. I'm doing very well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your show.
Oh, well, thanks for coming. Oh, thanks for coming, and thanks for giving up your evening and sharing your time with us and your music. I'm really looking forward to. We've got some great stuff, haven't we, to play, and I'm very excited about that. So the first thing I usually start with now is how's lockdown been? Because I know you're not somebody who sits around and you like to make most of your time. You're very productive. You're incredibly productive, and you've built this amazing studio. So I'd imagine that you've been getting the most out of that in the time. What have you been up to this year? Obviously, I know you had a big tour planned, didn't you? Unfortunately, that obviously didn't go ahead. So I hope that wasn't too much of a blow.
Yeah, there was lots of stuff in the diary for this year. One of the big things is that it's the 100th anniversary of Dave Brubeck's birth this year.
That's right.
And of course, I play with Darius Brubeck's quartet, and the Brubecks play Brubeck, which is the three Brubeck brothers, and me as the honorary Brubeck in the band. And we had a lot of stuff around the world, especially in the US, celebrating the centenary year. Mm. And sadly, all that got wiped out with one fell swoop. We did make it as far as New Orleans in January. We went to New Orleans and New York in January.
Wow. Right.
And then we did Ronnie Scott's in I can't remember now. I think it was the very end of February, or maybe it was the very start of March. Anyway,
it feels like 10 years ago, doesn't it? When we talk about
really,
that,
those were the last gigs that I did.
Yeah,
all the Brubecks and everyone around them came down with the dreaded virus and were very sick from it.
Oh,
And
crikey.
I was the only one that seemed to swerve it. But
Wow.
that was the
Yeah.
last thing before the lockdown. So yeah, it certainly. Well, I mean, obviously, it's taken the stuffing out of all of us. But like yourself, Buster, I know you're a very proactive kind of guy with your various enterprises. I've been sort of taking the opportunity of doing all those things I was putting off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reckoning I never had time because I was always gigging. Well, I haven't got that excuse now because there aren't any gigs in the book. Yeah, I've done lots of stuff. I mixed a lot of projects that were waiting to be done.
Right.
I've been practicing the piano every day, as I've been promising myself for the last 30 years I'd get down to at some stage.
Was that something you would ever share with the public on recording or gig wise, or is that just a personal kind
well, actually, I have played. So I've I've always been that occasional second keyboard player in the pop bands I used to tour with. So I'm no stranger to playing some simple, some idiot proof piano parts in the background behind the main piano player. And doing a lot of teaching. Obviously, I'm used to accompanying my students and stuff like that. So,
well, me too. I call myself a piano owner, which you can probably just about see
there you go. Yeah, well, mine's around the corner. You can't see mine. You can see my drum kit though. I play the drums.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, they're very nice. Yeah, I think everybody should do a bit of drums and a bit of piano. I think that's a really good thing for everybody to do, isn't it? No matter what you play. Yeah. Although I do find I get Tourette's a bit when I play the piano because the fingers won't go where the brain tells it to go.
Piano is definitely, for me, the most challenging instrument just because of the fact that you can take care of so many things at once. And, just practicing a tune on the piano, you have to think of what perspective you're going to play it from. Are you endeavoring to do a sort of reduced, complete arrangement of the whole thing? Or are you going to play a comping part? You're going to play a melody part with shell voicings.
Yeah.
You're going to play a bass line, no chords in the melody, So there's immediately, before you've even started, you've got to think of which of about 3 or 4 different possible strategies you're going to adopt.
Yeah, it's a great instrument. I mean, I often say, if you want to study music, the piano is where to study it at. Studying music at the piano. I mean, all musicians spend time at the piano, don't they? Because it's all there. You can see it. You can see the shapes, the voicings, and it goes higher and lower than anything else. So it's like the whole orchestra is there, isn't it? There's nothing that's on another instrument that's not on the piano. And as you say, there's all those areas to it as well. That's fascinating, great. And so the other thing you had lined up for this year was a big tour with the album with Rob Luft, wasn't it? With that band, was that the?
Well, actually, we did that last year. We got that at the end of last year.
You got
what we were intending to do, what was in the diary to be doing around now is recording the next album with Rob. But Rob was actually kind of put himself in sort of, I guess, self-imposed exile in Switzerland at the moment. Because he's got a few gigs out there and they seem to be managing the thing a little more effectively than we are.
Did he just get something on was there something on ECM as well that he just announced?
Yes, that's right. Rob's partner, Alina Duni, is a ECM artist.
Wow, fantastic. Great news. Very pleased for him. Yeah.
And Rob works with Rob.
Yeah,
Actually, he had some great stories about recording with ECM. It does sound fun. But anyway, I won't talk about that at the moment.
Yeah, let's talk about you.
Yeah, enough about Rob. More about me.
Not Rob, yeah. So so what I'm going to do is we've got some great videos which you've produced in your studio. And so I think we'll start with this a track from the album. And the album is Oh Higgins and Luft Play Monk and Train. So pretty, it does what it says on the tin there. Very good title.
Not much room for interpretation.
So I'm just interested. One of the things I like to ask people is like how these projects came together, because I think it's really interesting, and it's not always obvious, and sometimes there can be little stories about it. So how did you I mean, obviously Rob's done a lot now in his short amount of time. And how did you first hook up with Rob, and where did the idea come for making this album? And then what was the kind of Train and Monk thing? Because I wouldn't have thought guitar and sax, Train and Monk. But I mean, obviously Monk is known a lot for his compositions as probably more so than his piano playing. So I just wondered what the impetus behind that project was.
Yeah, well, the way it came together was Rob called me up to do a couple of kind of casual blowing gigs with him. I'd played with him a few times. In fact, I'd seen him kind of come through the ranks of Nijo, and I'd been involved with Nijo as a guest director.
Right.
When Mark Armstrong couldn't do it a couple of times when Rob was in the band. So, I knew he was one to watch and that he was already way ahead of the game, and I'd done a couple of gigs with him with various people, and Rob just gave me a call out of the blue and said, "Do you fancy doing a couple of gigs with me? Just, blow some standards, quartet."
Right.
And I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." And there was obviously, a good vibe going on, and Rob and I, as well as the standards that we were tending to call quite a few sort of Coltrane and Monk tunes.
On these gigs, these were just...
Yeah, by the time we did the second one, and the second one was even better than the first one.
Yeah.
I said, look, do you think it'd be fun to try and get a band together? I mean, and see we can string 5 or 10 dates together and come to my studio, do a recording. Next thing, we ended up with a 40-date tour in the book, and it's kind of really captured people's imagination. I think they enjoyed the meeting of the generations like that, which is something that doesn't perhaps happen as often as it should do. It does happen, but I think it's really healthy for the different generations to get together.
Well, this is becoming a bit of a recurring theme on this show. We had Jeff Simpkins last week talking about quintet he's got with all graduated students that he's taught, and Stan Saltzman obviously talking about playing with some much younger generation, and what they both said was that it's a very much a two-way experience. And is that something that you would...
Yeah, and I think it's come I think perhaps a lot of these things are kind of starting off a bit of a revival for that, because I remember when I was coming up, lots of guys like Jim Mullen and Martin Taylor booked me to be in the bands, and John Dankworth. And I benefited hugely from playing with these guys, and hopefully they got something out of playing with a young punk like me at the time, and anyway, it's great though, and so the quartet with Rob has been very good, because we've got Rod Youngs on drums, who's sort of my generation. Brilliant. And Scott Flanagan from Northern Ireland on organ.
I met Scott, actually. Funny enough, I met Scott in Belfast. I went out to do some gigs out there with a tenor player called Jeremy Lyons, who's a very talented player. I went out there. He's from Belfast, and we were double billed with Scott. And then I saw him on your album. I said, "Oh, I know that." That name, that's great. He's a lovely player, and he plays organ as well, right? As well as piano.
So also having the organ to do the Monk thing, the Monk and Train thing, was taking it a bit more off piste, which sort of meant that we couldn't impersonate the records, which was never our plan in the first place.
So you
different slant on it.
You don't want to get pulled into that groove. It puts you in a different place where you can just be fresh on the material. Yeah, fantastic. Well, look, let's play a bit of that. So this is a video. And this was shot at your studio, and this was recorded in January last year. And this is a track called "Like Sunny," and this is from the album Higgins and Luft play Monk and Train. So let's watch a little bit of that. Fantastic. Wonderful, and that was Like Sunny, which was taken from the album Oh Higgins and Luft to Play Monk and Train, and that featured on the saxophone Dave O'Higgins, my guest on the show this evening. So yeah, there's a few little hellos in the chat box there. So just want to say hi to everybody out there: John Quinn, Lance, Laurie, Peter, and Robin from the Worthing, who's offering to buy you dinner, Dave. So if you ever get down there, and to Paul, who's got the album, said he enjoys it, and to David Stacey, who's tuning in all the way from Northern California, folks. So here we go. We are reaching out. So I think it would be good if we could go back to the beginning and talk about how you got started, what your influences were, and how you kind of came into playing, and at what point did you feel like this is the thing I want to do? Because you were a very prolific young talent as well, and I mean it's known the time you spent in Niger and things like that. But I was thinking perhaps before that, maybe how you got to there even.
Yeah, well, when I was at school, I started playing drums. I think I was about 9 or 10 when I started playing. Yeah, I was 9. That was it, when I started playing drums. And by the time I was 11 years old, a friend at school played me Led Zepp 4. Right. And that album really changed my life. I remember hearing it and thinking, wow, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I was so into John Bonham's drumming, the vibe of it, the sound, the feel. And
yeah.
So that kind of really rocket propelled me into, so I started practicing like crazy. And I started getting myself a few gigs. In fact, I did my first professional gig when I was 11 years old.
Wow.
At the Derby Engineers Club. And it turned into a regular gig. I played every Sunday night at the Derby Engineers Club with an organ player called Derek.
Wow. Did they pay you in fags and pints as well?
I got, for my first gig, I got 12 quid actually. And
amazing,
yeah, they did give me a sort of surreptitious pint I was allowed to have actually, which I don't think my mum was very impressed with. But
at which point you think you're a millionaire because everyone else is getting 50p on their paper rounds.
I'll tell you what, if I did a depressing calculation, which was the sort of price of beer relative to gig fees, and if I just got the same rate now,
index linked,
700 quid a gig, but
yeah,
which some people might think I'm on, but I had a really good night for that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, I was playing drums, and I got myself a regular gig back in cabaret artists. You know, it would be magicians or singers, and
great
it was a real
training.
baptism of fire. Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and we had to do a couple of hits and a couple of sort of dances at the end of the night, and so you know, I really got to learn to play everything from, you know, a rumba and a quick step
Brilliant.
to a Valletta and to
Wow.
you know, whatever was in the pop charts at the time, and I had to read charts so I could back the cabaret artists, and
Amazing.
so it was quite an education, and people started lending me records and getting me to listen to stuff, and it wasn't long before I was listening to in the charts at the time. I guess this is now sort of rolling on sort of late 70s or something. The Crusaders were in the charts with Street Life,
Right.
and all that stuff, like the early Brecker Brothers were around, Earth, Wind and Fire. And I started to get the sound of horns in my head, you know, and
they still had those big horn sections.
Saxophone. Yeah.
Sorry.
I thought it'd be really cool to play the saxophone. And people, a few friends who had some of these, you know, funky records also had jazz records. And someone lent me a load of Miles Davis records and even Charlie Parker records and Coltrane things. And I just dug it all, you know, and I thought, wow, you know, I've got to do some serious listening. And talking to the musicians, they were all saying, yeah, well, it's only really the jazz musicians who really know their stuff. You got to check this out. You really want to know what's going on. Get a bit more into this. And so I was sort of, you know, heeding the advice of the older and wiser musicians, and busily sort of sucking it up, really. And I bought myself a saxophone with the money I made from playing drums.
And were you having lessons at this point?
I was having lessons on drums. I didn't have any lessons on saxophone. I just I don't know. Well, I kind of do know why not, actually. There weren't really, I didn't know any jazz saxophone players really in the area. I knew lots of other musicians. And so I just bought the records they told me to buy and started trying to copy them. You know, it was real sort of old-fashioned way of learning. I literally was just trying to copy everything I heard on the records. So starting with stuff that was way too hard for me. But that was the way.
This is vinyl as well, right? So you got to pick the thing up.
Yeah,
put
completely.
It back and,
yeah, I mean, my favorite albums I've still got 2 copies of. The best tracks are completely worn out. You know. And I used to have an 18 RPM setting, so I could listen at half speed.
Slow it down,
dang, 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 like that. You know.
Sounds very familiar to me. All this, very familiar.
So yeah, that was a great journey, you know, and.
So were your parents musical? Were they musicians?
No,
were there musicians around?
No,
so this was just totally and wow. Yeah.
But of course I started, and they couldn't really. It was so weird, you know, to imagine it now, an era where a kid of sort of 11 years old could get himself a diary full of gigs. And, you know, I was making money as a kid.
Presumably your peers were not into jazz and things like that, were they? I mean,
no, I was a bit of a weirdo. Like
I think, well, again, this is it sounds very familiar. Very familiar territory.
It was funny. I remember the only way I could actually appease them was I had to learn all the pop records at the time.
Yeah.
So I also made sure I knew all the pop tracks. So
then you were cool. So then it didn't matter.
Exactly. Then I got away with it was cool because I could play them that stuff usually on the drums and the piano and the saxophone. So I thought, oh well, he must be all right if he knows that stuff.
Fantastic. So then of course, Nijo was a big thing, wasn't it? And you were, you know, hugely successful there with that, and a big part of that scene. When was that? Was it a few years you were doing Nijo?
Yeah, well, I come from Derbyshire originally, so I moved to London to go to college, and I went to the City University. Which does it still does a very progressive sort of contemporary music degree course, which sort of fuses and anything that's off the beaten track. And jazz was considered well off the beaten track back in.
I know some great musicians that study there. Yeah, it's a very
John
good course.
Paracelli went there actually, but he didn't do music there. He did something else altogether. But I only remember that because he was there around the time I was there. But
a very open kind of course in terms of liked all music, classical,
Absolutely, lots of
contemporary.
ethnomusicology and electronic
Brilliant.
music, and they had one of the first 2 samplers in the UK, a Fairlight, a sort of zillion quid Fairlight sampler. But all my practical tuition was at the Guildhall School of Music, so actually about 50% of my course was at the Guildhall.
Right, because they're quite close, weren't they? So it was like you'd come into the, and that's where you got the tuition and things like that as well.
Yeah,
and that was the
studied
degree
classical
program.
saxophone at the Guildhall.
Right. Oh, cool.
With Anton Weinberg, who's a great clarinetist, and
Brilliant.
I'm still occasionally in touch with Anton. He was absolutely fantastic encouragement to me.
Yeah.
And we were poles apart in terms of what our sort of specialties and interests were musically, but we sort of completely related at the same time. And so it was, I really enjoyed seeing him at the Guildhall. I learned a lot from him.
Brilliant. And this would have been Nijo. Were you still in Nijo when you were doing? And then
when I was
you got picked up, didn't you, by Johnny Dankworth?
John Dankworth.
John Dankworth. And that must have been a great kind of moment for you to get some exposure as well, and all this. And then there was Martin Taylor's band. What's the chronology of that? Because the
chronology actually was around the same time I got picked up by John Dankworth, who had a load of gigs. It was called the John Dankworth Quintet with Cleo Lane, and it was actually 5 of us plus John plus Cleo, so there were 7 of us all together. Alec was in it at the time on bass. And Bill Lesage was on vibes, John Haller piano, Alan Ganley on drums. And it was a great band. We had such a fantastic time. At the same time, I also got a gig with an Icelandic jazz funk band called Mezzo Forte.
Right.
And Mezzo Forte were pretty big in the 80s. And the first gig I did with them was in Denmark at a festival, the Roskilde Festival, to 17,000 people. And we were headlining with Steps Ahead supporting us. I mean, it was so wrong, but
Oh, that's wonderful.
What a topsy-turvy world. And I barely knew the tunes, and I was like 21 years old,
There's a touch of Spinal Tap there, isn't there? The puppet show at the bottom. Fantastic.
So I got 2 very good breaks, and obviously I wasn't able to do Nijo anymore. At that time, I guess I didn't need to. But
you finished your degree, right? You finished the course, or you just got too busy?
I left 1 year before the end of my course.
Right.
So I have no qualifications, even though I've created all sorts of degree courses and marked all sorts of.
Well, you just got too busy, so you had to get on with it. Yeah, exactly. You're out there doing it. Well, look, let's place it. This is great. It's really kind of you to share all this. It's very interesting, and to get that kind of chronology there, because I knew some of those things, but I wasn't quite which way around it is. And I mean, it's a testimony as well to what a great talent you are, and how, I mean, you must have stood out a mile for those great people to pick you up at that point as well. And they're no fools, are they? They know what they see and what they hear, and I'm sure it might have felt a bit like, what am I doing here? But
well, I still have to pinch myself really when I think about it. But John Dankworth had a really good line. He said that he liked to work in a band that was the perfect mixture of doddering senility and pathetic youthful incompetence.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, cheers.
At the time, I was at the other end of the scale.
I was going to say, yeah. Okay, got the other bit to look forward to then.
Yeah.
Right, well, let's play some music. So what we're going to play now is we're going to go back a little bit. I mean, because your output is incredible. You've produced so much great music, and there's so many albums. And I just thought it'd be nice. Well, you've picked this track for us from the 2001 album Big Shake Up, which was the Dave O'Higgins Big-ish Band. Which is and was this something you did a lot of writing for as well? Are these all your tunes? Yeah,
they're all my tunes and arrangements, and it was a time when I'd done a lot of playing with all sorts of different groups, and I'd done a lot of small group stuff and written for all of them, and I hadn't done much writing for larger groups, and I decided it was time to do it. And I just got my first copy of Sibelius, and I locked myself away for about 4 months writing and rewriting until I was happy. Boy, I worked hard on that album, but I'm actually very proud of that album because
it sounds great. Yeah.
And the cool thing was we actually got some gigs as well. I got an award. I got a Peter Whittingham Award to help me record that album.
Oh, fantastic.
Which I'm now an adjudicator for the awards.
Oh, amazing.
And there's been a lot of good players who've got it since as well. A lot of good players who I've had a hand in, helping with awards and stuff, which is nice to put something back. But also we got some tours together, and it was quite amazing for a 10-piece band. We did quite a lot of gigs with that band.
Yeah.
It was a well-honed thing that was a real thrill to do.
Who's the lineup on this?
Okay, on Big Shake Up, yeah. Well, we made two records. So on Big Shake Up, I'm pretty sure it's Winston Clifford on drums.
Right.
I think it's Orlando LaFleming on bass.
Right. Yeah.
On Big Shake Up,
right.
And Jim Watson on piano and organ, and Mark Nightingale on trombone, Martin Shaw trumpet, Orrin Marshall on tuba, Alex Garnett on baritone.
Right.
Who have I left off? Mike Outram on guitar, Pete Eckford on percussion.
Right.
I think that's the band. I think I've got everyone.
Fantastic. Well, let's hear a bit of that. So this we've got some pictures to show as well while we play this. So this is from 2001, and the track is called Old Self. Here we go. Wonderful. And that was Old Self from the 2001 album Big Shake Up by the Dave Higgins Big Ish Band, a great 10-piece of a great album of all original music written, composed, and arranged by Dave. So we've got we're going to play now. We've got this promo. We've got a video promo for your newest album, which is out today. Is that right?
Yeah, you've timed it to perfection. Yeah, I mean, originally, obviously we've been struggling to get gigs in the book, so we sort of arranged the release date to be as close as we could to when we could actually get a gig. And Steve Ruby, who's been putting on stuff at the 606 Club, big shout out to him, because it's been incredible. He's been putting on streaming things with no audience when we were in the middle of the full lockdown, and now we're able to socially distance audiences with very strict rules. He maintains all of that protocol, and he's putting gigs on. So we did an album launch there, and so anyway, it worked out for our timing to get a gig at the Six, and also for when the major jazz publications could find a bit of column space for us. It's all a juggling act.
So have you done the album launch?
Hey. Yeah.
When was that?
The album launch we did the 10th of October, so it was 2 weeks ago tomorrow, if that makes sense. 2 weeks ago tomorrow. Can you say that?
Yeah. That was streamed, was it? That was a streamer, or was it?
It was with an audience, with a half capacity audience. At the time, you were allowed to have mixed households sitting at the same table, up to 6 people. But we weren't allowed to talk to any of our guests, so we were, it was quite weird. We invited people along, and we were only allowed to wave at them from the stage.
Right. Okay. Well, that could be a good or bad thing, I suppose.
But, no, it was great to just see some people, even though we couldn't talk to them.
Yeah, I know.
We were allowed to talk to each other in the fan bubble.
It's good to have some audience there for the stream, isn't it? Because sometimes those streams are a bit.
They can be very dry.
When there's no one in the room and you get to the end and there's just this sort of awkward silence. It's a bit. I really feel for the guys, when that's happening. So so this album then with Judith. So it's how. When did you start on that? Was that just this year? Obviously, was this a lockdown project, or was this something you were already planning, or was it just sort of happened to fit around it? Or
it's been a project that's been ongoing for ages, actually. Basically, because Judith is a forensic pathologist by profession, but she's always been a great saxophone player, and she's from Germany. And in Germany, you're encouraged to study another subject alongside your main study. So when she was doing medicine, she was doing music as well. And for her, it was always, I guess, a bit of a dilemma as to whether or not she was going to go into medicine, or whether she was going to go into music. But she's always maintained the playing to that high standard.
Yes, she's a great player, yeah.
And so we've always had a load of tunes that, we've played together, and we can pull out at jam sessions, or if anyone, sometimes if I'm doing a gig abroad somewhere and we have some informal sessions, then obviously I get Judith to play as well. And we started to get a couple of gigs every year come in, and we put it out under the moniker His and Hers, because it just seemed like a fun thing to do. Yeah. And so we've got a library of stuff now that we do. We haven't really done many original compositions because we'd never really thought about recording it. But recently, we talked a bit about it. We said, when I get some time from touring, we should do an album. And with the prospect of lockdown looming and all the gigs getting cancelled, we thought, let's do it. Let's get the guys in the studio just before, the lockdown's imminent. Let's see what they're doing. And we were all getting gigs cancelled left, right, and centre.
Yeah, it was horrendous.
So the guys were free. And I spent a week of furious writing. Judith and I banged our heads together. Well, we both wrote stuff. Actually, the writing came very easily. It was just the getting the parts ready that, as you well know, that whole
that's another whole. thing altogether.
So scoring it out, and we wrote some tunes very quickly. So we had our originals, and it was great how spontaneously that came about. Judith.
So these are all original tunes on this album?
No, we play on we designed it for vinyl primarily because we thought we with vinyl making something of a comeback and CDs in such decline, we've been buying a few reissues of stuff. And we were listening to Clubhouse, Dexter Gordon record, which is a nice Blue Note reissue. And it just occurred to us how fantastic it was, the format. Sitting down, listening to 3 tunes, and sort of 15 to 20 minutes later, you turn the record over, you go and refill your wine glass, and you sit down again and listen to the other side. And
how civilized,
Exactly. You remember every track, the order it was in.
When was the last time something else, like bombing around, doing millions of things?
But when was the last time you did that with a CD? Or if you stream something, you just don't do it. But the tactile vinyl LP, the sleeve has that smell that vinyl sleeves have, even though it's been manufactured. I don't know what they do with it, but maybe I don't want to know. They always have that smell. It's like US dollars have a certain smell, And so there's something really nostalgic about it that's brilliant, but also something incredibly digestible about length of thing, the sleeve where you see everyone that's on it. There's no danger of forgetting who's in your biggish band when it's on a vinyl LP.
We just, but they're quite expensive to make. I mean, we've just Alison's band, the Arc, the Alison Rennie Quintet, which our last album was vinyl as well. Which she got a limited run pressed. And is that what you've done with this then? If so, it's a download and a vinyl. I think we got CDs as well. We did a sort of like a limited run of vinyls. But they're not cheap. But they're quality things now, and I think people do appreciate them more now, and they're happy to pay for it, aren't they?
And there's something nice, but just thinking about it in that format, though, and this is hence my long-winded answer when you said about how many originals were there, is that we were programming it for the vinyl, and the optimum vinyl length, being an audio nerd,
it's shorter.
Is 36 minutes. 18 minutes aside is the perfect.
Is that all it is? I didn't even remember it was that.
It can be a bit longer, but once it gets longer than that, the quality deteriorates.
Right.
So I really had this 18 minutes per side, 3 tunes aside, all planned.
Which is, sorry to interrupt, but for the audience, CDs are 80 minutes, if I'm right. Is that right?
The CD, and they don't normally run that long. Generally, people make CDs that are around about an hour.
An hour, so yeah.
I can't recall seeing any CDs that go over 70 minutes actually. But normally they're between about 55 and 65 minutes.
Right.
And you can't remember all the songs. I bet you can't remember all the songs on any CD you've got.
The ones I've made, let alone the ones I've bought.
There you go. Always seems a bit too long to me.
Yeah, but it's interesting that, isn't it? How you cut your cloth accordingly. It has an effect on the whole thing. And I think an album, you're right, you would listen to the whole album, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Whereas instead of listening to tracks. And then when you're actually making the album and recording it, you're thinking of it as a full set. It's not like, I mean, we've kind of got this whole compilation thing now, haven't we, with these streams and downloads and cherry picking single tracks. It's almost gone back to singles, hasn't it? Do you know what I mean? Like how it used to be before the album concept. Now that with vinyl, the album concept is a whole different concept, isn't it? Yeah. I see what you mean. Yeah.
So with that in mind, we wanted we were going to play 3 of our greatest hits, as we call them. Tunes we've been doing over the years from our book. And we thought 3 new tunes. So it kind of had that classic sort of old Blue Note kind of vibe about it, with the band originals and the standard tunes. And so we wrote 3 new originals, and we started from the idea of, well, we want a fast one, maybe like a modal kind of thing, maybe like a 3/4 thing, and maybe like a sort of Latin-y thing.
Yeah.
Judith got her sax out, I sat at the piano, and it was sort of 20 minutes a tune, really. Wow. Just for the flow was great. I mean, it took me a lot longer to score the bloody things out, but for the actual writing, pencil manuscript, piano, and Judith with the saxophones. Very, very easy. So, and that was great. And
so
the
very
guys,
analog in the writing process as well. Then,
yeah.
right.
You know, I still like to write that way. I definitely, I always write sitting at the piano. I don't like writing sitting noodling at a sequence or something. I've tried it. It never comes out right to me. It sounds unnatural for me.
But it is a handy tool for producing parts and scoring and all the rest of it. Yeah, and printing stuff off and transposing, obviously. And
I'm very techie. You know, I use Sibelius. I teach Sibelius at college, although actually I prefer using Dorico. I don't think that's any big secret. Also, the guys at Dorico are really, really helpful, and they're London-based. All the guys used to work at Sibelius, or a lot of them, and they got sacked from Avid when Avid started charging subscription fees for everything.
Right.
And Dorico are London-based, and the Dorico system is really, really great. So I'm into the notation software, just like I'm into the recording software. And I was chatting to you before off air about the video editing software as well, and what a can of work that is. And that's been another lockdown treat to myself that I've been forcing myself through.
It's good fun though, isn't it? We can certainly while away the hours, can't you? On Final Cut
it certainly
Pro,
does. Yeah, 6 months has gone in a flash.
While away the weeks, never mind the hours. Yeah. So, well, look, we've got this little you made a little promo video for the album, so we're going to play that. And but so if people want to get this track, is it on Bandcamp or is it only on vinyl?
Bandcamp, CD, vinyl, high-res downloads.
Right.
Yeah, the whole caboodle.
And that's all in the links below, folks. So Dave's website and his Bandcamp details are down there. So do check that out. So let's have a little look at this. This is from the album is His and Hers, and this track. Perhaps you can explain. I mean, I can imagine what inspired this. It's called Los Bandidos Bogarolas.
Yeah, well, that's so glamorous retitling of referring to the fixation the public had with a certain retail item and clearing them out of all the shops.
Was this a particular moment that was there a particular day that you had that inspired this? We'll leave that to the imagination. So here we are, folks. Los Bandidos Bogarolas.
I'm Judith Higgins, originally from Hamburg in Germany. I'm a forensic pathologist, so my day job involves doing autopsies. This process is to discover the truth about how someone has died, to tell the final story that they can't for themselves.
I'm Dave Higgins. I'm British with an Irish passport and a Mexican grandmother.
When we came up with the idea to record, actually inspired by listening to the vinyl reissue of Clubhouse by Dexter Gordon, we decided to co-write some original tunes especially. That process was surprisingly quick and easy, with Dave sitting at the piano with a pencil and some manuscript, and me with my saxophone playing some lines.
The His and Hers recording was inspired by listening to the Dexter LP Judith mentioned. We sat and listened all the way through in rapt attention and concluded at the end, as well as being a great record, that the vinyl format encourages this kind of engagement more than the overlong CD. With this in mind, we programmed a set specifically for vinyl presentation.
have my favorite piano player, Graham Harvey, in the band. Graham is a great soloist and has a block chord soloing thing down that is like having a big band in a trio. He's also a great comper and always knows the right thing to play or to leave out to complement the soloist.
Jeremy Brown is on bass. I've worked a lot with Jeremy in the BBC Big Band and many other projects over the years. Joining Jeremy in the engine room is the youngest member of the band, the super swinging Josh Morrison on drums.
Enjoying the show. I just want to take a moment to tell you about a new way that you can help support me do this, and that is through patreon.com. That's right, I've got an account now, so the link's below here, patreon.com Buster Birch, and if you go along to there, you can now make donations by Visa credit card, so you don't have to use PayPal if you don't want to do that. And the advantage of Patreon is that once you do it once, it will automatically deduct on a per show basis. So instead of having to fill in the forms every week, if you want to make a regular donation, then that will just automatically deduct straight to your credit card each per show. And that is hugely helpful to me because it means I know that I've got a certain amount coming in every time I do a show, and that really helps me plan ahead and keeps the viable sustainability of the show going. There's two levels of sponsorship. There's my silver and gold membership. All of my Patreon supporters will get a big thank you personally from me live on the show, and the gold member sponsors will get an additional Spotify playlist which will be sent to you each week. It's something that I'm putting together. It's personally curated by me and will feature lots more albums by the guest artists each week. So it's a great opportunity to get to know this music much better. If you're really enjoying the show and you like the little tasters that you're hearing, that's a great way to get to know this music even more and enjoy in full comfort the full sound of the full albums. Thanks very much. Back to the show. Yes, that's right. We're live. We're live on YouTube, and with me in the virtual studio, the virtual jazz club, is the wonderful Dave O'Higgins. I'm just going to say a quick hello to. We've got a few more comments there. Hello, Sarah, Thomas, and David Wright, and Paul, and Francesco Barberini. Dave says hello.
Yeah, big hello to Frank, because he's an old buddy of mine from school, and he was one of the few real like-minded people I was at school with. He's a fantastic guitarist, and he lives in Italy. And so, hi Frank. Nice to know you're listening. I hope all's well.
Great. Yes. Welcome, Frank. Nice to have you on the show with us. We were just saying there's so much that you've done, so much output, so many great bands there's great musicians you've worked with. So many albums. We can only give a little taste, ladies and gentlemen. But we could mention, you briefly mentioned the Darius Brubeck Quartet, and there's a new album of that coming out soon, I believe, live in Poland.
It's been released already, and it's called Live in Poland. It was recorded, I guess it must have been about a year or maybe even 18 months ago now. But we did a tour of Poland retracing the tour of the famous Dave Brubeck Quartet in 1958, which was
the cultural ambassador tour things. Yeah. 58. So was that when and then he went to Turkey and out there, and that's when he did
exactly. Went to
Afghanistan.
And, and that was where all that time out material was gleaned from guys playing.
Amazing.
I don't know, shawms on the backs of camels, kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know?
And they were all clapping, weren't they? They clapped.
Yeah.
And he had all that thing going on.
Yeah, Blue Rondo and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? The American government paid for the jazz musicians to go on these cultural tours to take
it was
the music.
To try and show the world how open-minded and liberal and all-embracing they were, which of course is true to this day.
Just like now, yeah, brilliant. So moving swiftly on before we get cut off.
A big foot comes down on us.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Somebody suddenly kicks my front door in and pulls the plug out. Yeah. It's amazing though, isn't it, really? I mean, that really is something that they've got these great musicians, these jazz musicians together and pay for them to tour. Louis, of course, went on all these tours as well.
Yeah.
And there's some great footage of them all out in the Middle East and
But I mean, Dave Brubeck though was a brilliant exponent for the whole civil rights movement as well. Was a good ambassador for that as well, and was very much respected and liked by all of his jazz musician contemporaries and colleagues. He was very good friends with Duke Ellington.
Yeah, and he had a mixed race band, which in the 50s was still quite a thing, wasn't it? I think with Eugene Wright on the bass.
Often refused to do gigs if there was the slightest whiff of any argy-bargy about it. And Miles Davis used to like to play Brubeck tunes and played In Your Own Sweet Way and the Duke. And also always had an ear to what Brubeck was doing and would pinch some of the ideas he liked, like playing things 3/4. No one did until Dave Brubeck did it, and then Miles released Someday My Prince Will Come after that, which was considered a corny Disney tune, but Brubeck played it, so Miles wanted to play it.
Dave does Disney, isn't it? That's the Disney. He did all the Disney tracks. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. So there's a fantastic quote on his website. I don't know if you've seen it, where he got slated by a critic in was it Downbeat or one of these big things that said, and he sort of pontificated about how it is physically impossible to swing in 3/4 or something, or because and he gave this kind of very pompous kind of theory as to why it couldn't possibly be jazz or swinging unless it's 4/4, and what is this? What an apocryphal music, a terrible music. It's on Dave Brubeck's website. I think he was very proud of it, of that kind of sort of ignorance, and very much that he's fighting against probably all his career, really, I should imagine, to a certain extent.
Yeah, well, I've heard lots from Darius and Chris and Dan about other reviews and things as well. And yeah, it seems the critics had it in for them for a lot of those things. And one thing certainly was the choice of playing in 3/4. But also at the time they were experimenting with stuff. Joe Morello would kind of deliberately play 6 against the 3, so it more sounded like it was in 4, even though it was in 3. And then Dave was doing these dotted rhythms, like a sort of ragtime dotted rhythm against it. Amazing. So there was a lot of this stuff going on. Yeah. But I mean, that's cool. They were really pushing the envelope, and
oh yeah, I mean, and again, we forget, like, at the time, it's just incredibly progressive and forward thinking, and and again, like you say, there's still what I find interesting with a lot of these very early jazz, and we can look at it with many different jazz artists. What are now considered classics that we know so well, like you can sing the whole solo, and these records, they seem so utterly perfect to us because we've heard them so many times. You sort of forget they'd never played that before. Not only had they never played it, nobody had played that before. And they were going in the studio just trying stuff out. And this was the result of it. And now we've got these, they're almost like holy kind of grail records where everything just seems so completely perfect to us. But they were just experimenting, which is nuts, isn't it, when you think about it? Like the sort of, for them to achieve that in such a void of what's around them. I don't know.
Yeah, that time must have been thrilling, and just getting the stories secondhand from Darius about how, he remembers when whatever Jerry Mulligan and Paul Desmond were around at the house and they were trying such and such out, and or when he was standing at the side of the stage with Dave watching a Miles Davis gig, and Miles was moaning about Coltrane playing too long, or something like that.
We almost forget they're real people, don't we?
Yeah, it transports you. It at least gives you some kind of connection. And I remember feeling this, first of all, with John Dankworth telling me about going to jam sessions on 52nd Street and seeing Charlie Parker play.
Yeah.
And So if you can touch someone who touched them, then it feels like you're only once removed from the source like that. And so it's quite a special connection. And it was nice to see when we toured Poland. It was very nice to see how much it meant to Darius and to the Polish people that we were retracing those steps, because some of them had been there the first time around, and Darius traveled with the band.
Wow.
too. He was only about 8 years old or 9 years old or something, and did a diary from the trip. And so we retraced. We did all the same towns. We were fabulously well looked after, and we recorded, all the gigs were recorded by radio stations, and they let us have a copy, and we just basically used the recordings were a bit mixed in terms of how good the quality of the recording was, and we had one really standout night, which was in Poznan, at a club called the Blue Note Club, which I don't think is affiliated to the official Blue Note Clubs, but it's called the Blue Note Club. It's in Poznan, and that was an especially killer gig. And so that's the one you just got the whole gig on that live album.
And they caught that on that was recorded, and that's the album. I see. Great. Yeah.
And I mastered it. I mixed it, mastered it afterwards.
Fantastic.
It's a live album. So that's the Darius Brubeck Quartet album, which is also released on the Ubuntu label. And there's a tie in there because, of course, Martin Hummel's Ubuntu label also release Oh Higgins and Luft, and have also released His and Hers.
His and Hers, I saw that on there.
Fantastic. So we're all label mates.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, I thought we'd also touch on another project that you've been very involved with as well, which is Matt Bianco, and that's a band that's really been, most people know from the mid '80s. They had some big hit records, pop records in the UK and Europe. But they've kept going, and they've been through some itinerations of different lineups, I think. But they've always had some great sort of jazz musicians involved with that music as well, haven't they? And performing.
Yeah, and I originally joined the band in 1990 for their first trip to Japan, and I toured with the band for about 5 years then, and they always used to get me to go back and record solos on new albums of theirs, and I knew the guys. I got to know them really well, so we became good friends. And really, it was two guys who led the band. They had various session players playing with them, and Mark Riley, who is Matt Bianco, and Mark Fisher, who sadly passed away a couple of years ago, who's the son of Tony Fisher, the jazz trumpet player, who used to play with Danquith's band as well. Tony's still going strong, still plays in the Ronnie Scott's Jazz Orchestra, even though he's in his 80s now. Wow. And so the two Marks were Matt Bianco plus the session musicians. And then when Mark was very ill, he had a protracted battle with cancer. Mark Riley, the singer, asked me if I'd be interested in co-writing some new songs with him, because Mark Fisher wasn't well enough to do it anymore. And it's ironic because Mark Fisher had always talked to me about doing an instrumental album with me at some stage, and in the I never got to do that. But even though I did a lot of sessions for him in various guises, and so Mark Riley and I started writing some songs, and that became the new album Gravity, which we recorded. We did all the instrumental stuff at my studio here. I did the arrangements for the band. I wrote the music, and Mark Riley wrote the lyrics.
Right.
And it was good, a really good fun collaboration. We've been touring in Europe and Japan. And again, we had a load of gigs cancelled this year. Although I have got to do a few in recent weeks. We did the Blue Note Club in Milan in Italy, and we did a gig in Slovakia. But the rest, we had a German tour and a Dutch tour, and that's all been cancelled. And who knows what's going to happen the start of next year.
So what I was going to ask was about how you approach these different projects where your role is different. So this is something we've talked about before on the show as well, where you know, if it's your band and you're picking and especially if you're writing the material, there's that. I'm just thinking like how you in your head how you get into that sort of mindset. Obviously, if it's your band, there's a lot more freedom for you to do whatever you like. But then, obviously, if you're doing it, is it a jazz thing, or is it coming at, you know, what's the sort? There's a stylistic thing in there as well. Then you've got your work as a session player, where you have to go in and do what's required and do the job, and you may or may not be able to put as much of yourself into that as you can. So I suppose there's always a bit of them. And then you've got these collaboration projects, which must be really interesting as well. Of how much, you know, and I just wondered what sort of percentage you find yourself doing, and what you like about those different things, and how you find that brings out different things within you being in those different roles, or is it all kind of just the same? It's all just work, and you're just in a different kind of doing a different gig for that day.
Yeah, well,
sorry,
definitely.
that was a very long question.
Definitely, you have to put on a different hat for each role. In the case of doing the Matt Bianco thing, obviously the direction had to be driven by Mark Riley, because it is his thing. He is Matt Bianco,
and they've got a body of work that it has to. Does it kind of has to
fit with that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But the band has been known as a sort of a jazzy sort of Latin pop band from the 80s.
Yeah.
And the idea was to do an update that was maybe less in the funky area and more in the jazz club kind of area, you know, with more of the sort of smoky jazz club kind of vibe going on with it.
Right.
So, and hence why we used my band also from the It's Always 9:30 and Zog album, with Sebastian de Krom, Jeff Gascoigne, Graham Harvey. And we had
so use your rhythm section with that.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. With Mark and with Elizabeth Troy, who's does the backing vocals and does lead vocals on a couple of tunes as well. So Mark drove the initial germ of an idea for each song. You know, he would come in saying, I've got a beat in mind, and perhaps like a little sort of chorus kind of catch, you know, a little chorus hook line. Can you write a song around this? Which is perfect for me, because if I get something to start off with, then I can take it all sorts of places. And for me, it was my pop project, and for Mark, it was his jazz project.
Right, yeah.
Which is kind of funny.
Meeting in the middle, like a Venn diagram where you can cross over,
And for every sort of extra 5 chords I'd put in, he'd cut out 3. Right. So, it's too dark. That's too dark. And but between us, actually, we'd come up with some things that were really nice, and it made the process definitely longer than it would be if I was writing by myself, because it was there was much more refining going on to boil it down into, and of course the way that, I mean, they're still pop song forms.
Yeah.
You know, with a sort of double verse, a chorus, single verse, a chorus, a middle 8, and then, you know, a chorus, and then maybe a sort of play out of some sort, or maybe a breakdown somewhere. And so you have to adhere to these kind of song formulae to fit into that. And it was great to do. And the way that Mark kind of controlled me through that to not be so too excessive with it, and also ended up with it sounding really like Matt Bianco at the end was great. And I think the track that I've earmarked for you to play is the one is Before It's Too Late.
Before It's Too Late, yeah.
And this one I'm particularly proud of, because it just it's a real nice meeting of those worlds.
Yeah, it's got a great feel. Yeah.
There's the sort of sultry sort of jazz out of time introduction, the sort of rubato ballad introduction, and it goes into a sort of kind of a jazz samba thing that's a bit reminiscent of Ayrton Moreira and Fleur Perrine, which were big influences on both of us.
Fourth World.
And also I supported that band at Ronnie Scott's on maybe 6 or 7 occasions, and got to know them all really well. And Ayrton and Fleur are good friends of mine.
I must have seen you there, because I saw that band a lot. Yeah, brilliant.
I'm sure you have. And so I was really drawn towards that kind of sound, and I think we got the mix quite nice. And also Mark wrote some fabulous lyrics for this song. It's really good fun if you listen to it.
Fantastic. Well, let's hear a bit of that. This is Matt Bianco. It's from the the latest album, Gravity, and this track is Before It's Too Late.
It's another day when all we do is talk about what is left to say. What do we really care about? Did we climb the highest peak? Were we dancing in the street? Did we find the perfect beach where there's no one? Girl, don't you think we must find a way before it's too late? Too late. It's another day, the same thing that you read about. Nothing really changed, what everybody talks about. If you see the northern lights, take an air balloon flight, make a pilgrimage and find your religion. Girl, don't you think we must find a way? Don't tell me it's just another day. We must find a way. Let's make it before it's too late.
Yes, and that is Matt Bianco and Before It's Too Late, and that was from the album Gravity, which was co-written and produced by Dave Higgins, my guest. Fantastic. Well, we're just saying the time has absolutely flown past again. It's been fascinating, Dave, and thank you so much for coming on and sharing your time and your music with us. And we wish you the best of luck with all these wonderful new projects you've got going. And it's great just to see you keeping yourself so busy with everything this year, and I hope that the gigs will soon start coming back soon.
Thank you. Yeah.
We're going to play out now with a video of your current quartet, which features Graham Harvey on the electric piano, Jeff Gascon on the bass, and Sebastian de Crom on the drums, which was the rhythm section that we just heard on that Matt Bianco album. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
yeah.
that trumpet that flugelhorn was Martin Shaw there featured, as you just informed us. So, folks, if you want to get any of Dave's music, it's all on Bandcamp. There's a link below. Do check out Dave's website, and I'm sure he'll be having many gigs to advertise on his website very soon. So, so this last track is another video that you shot in the studio again, and this is from the album. Now I'm going to have to ask you about this. It's Always 9:30 in Zog. So please do explain. That's the name of the album, right? Yeah. Where does that come from?
Well, okay, I won't go into too much detail about this, but
bearing in mind it's nearly 9:30. That's very good timing. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, there you go, almost Zog time.
Yeah.
What else time? What other time could it possibly be? It's kind of a running joke that I have with Judith, who is often unaware of what time it is, oh,
I see.
And it came about especially as we were doing a sound check at a gig just before the gig was supposed to begin, and Judith thought we were still sound checking when I counted in the first tune, and the audience was there, and she kind of hadn't noticed it. So I just made this joke. I said, well, I guess it's always 9:30 in Zog, isn't it? And that kind of stuck. It became a bit of a sort of catchphrase.
Wonderful.
And so now Judith is officially from Zog, and it is always 9:30.
Brilliant. Well, that's brilliant timing. So it probably will be by the time this track finishes.
Yeah,
so
perfect.
So thanks again, Dave. It's been really, really great. It's been great having you on here, and really appreciate you coming on the show. And,
thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed the show, folks, please do consider a donation. It's very much welcome at the moment. We've got you can pay by you can do a one-off on PayPal, or we do have that Patreon regular donation there. So next week I've got the vibraphone maestro Roger Beaujolais joining me next week. So that'll be a lot of fun. He's a very interesting guy, and he's produced a lot of great music as well. So we're looking forward to that. And there's some more. I've got some more artists signed up through to December. We're going up to Christmas. We'll be on every Friday. So do check the website busterbirch.co.uk/virtual jazz club. And so we're going to play out now with this this video, and this is the Dave O'Higgins Quartet. The album is It's Always 9:30 in Zog, and the track is Morpheus. Is this another original, Dave?
Yes, it is an original, and Morpheus is the Greek god of dreams. So you can sort of hear into this whatever your heart desires.
Fantastic! What a great way to finish. Thank you very much. Take care of yourselves, everyone, and I hope to see you next week. Cheers.
Bye.